Mr. Speaker, I think it's well established by now that I am extremely in favor and have asked this body multiple times and I'm asking again today for us to do a bill that would support our disabled veterans. Our disabled veterans in the state of New Jersey need relief.
Assemblyman Bergen, what's the purpose of your rising? Why are you doing it? Are you getting up to speak? You're making a point of personal privilege? Or are you making a motion?
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought your staff informed you, Mr. I've opened like this 100 times.
We need to get it on the record.
Oh, okay, no problem. So, Mr. Speaker, my intention for rising today is to make a motion to relieve Bill 888 from the Military and Veterans Affairs Committee.
Okay.
You got it, sir? Thank you.
You got it.
So, ladies and gentlemen of this body, disabled veterans in the state of New Jersey need your help. As I have mentioned multiple times before to you, there's property tax relief for veterans who are 100%.
Assemblyman Bergen, let me interrupt you. I'm usually very broad. I give great license to people who are making statements, want to make statements. But the purpose of the rule is for you to be able to negotiate, to point out deficiencies as you see them in the process, not to debate the bill. So if you want to make a motion about why we ought to move it back to second reading for the purposes of amendment, if you want to make a point you want to argue that we should do something else, you have to outline the process that has gone wrong.
Mr. Speaker.
In other words, you're not to debate the bill. Making a speech about the bill is debating the bill that you want to advance.
Mr. Speaker, actually, the rule, which allows me to make a motion to relieve a bill from committee, very specifically says that I have to explain why it wasn't given a fair shake in committee.
Yes.
Part of the reason why it's not given a fair shake in committee is establishing the fact that it's a good bill that should be moved.
No.
Why not?
It's to establish the facts relative to the action taken by the committee.
Where does it say that, Mr. Speaker?
I believe that's how you would define outline what was wrong with the committee.
Mr. Speaker, this is now my third time
Assemblyman
doing
Bergen,
this motion.
that's how I interpret the rule.
Well, then why did you not interpret it last time or the time before or the time before that?
Because I'm a nice guy, and I gave you a chance.
Mr. Speaker, I think you're well aware that you're being unfair here today.
I'm not.
I have 15 minutes.
In fact, I've been more than fair
Mr. Speaker,
with you.
I'm allowed 15 minutes to make an argument.
No, you're allowed.
30 seconds
yes,
into my
but
intro
the argument has
fair.
to be limited to the action that was taken in the committee and how that requires it to be removed from that committee.
But, Mr. Speaker.
Tell me what the committee has done wrong.
Mr. Speaker, you are inventing rules.
I'm not.
It does not say in the rule that there has to be related to action taken in the committee.
It says the purpose of the rule is to allow for a piece of legislation to be removed from the committee.
That's correct.
If in fact there is some justification for doing that, and that is the purpose of what you need to do in order to make a motion do that.
Listen, Mr. Speaker, I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
I understand what you're saying.
However,
Mr. Speaker, we are entitled to 15 minutes to argue our point when we stand up here. It is unreasonable
relative to the
for you to
procedural
force
matters,
me to get to the end in 30 seconds. Mr. Speaker, that's categorically unfair, and you know it.
Well, it's not categorically unfair.
It is, Mr. Speaker.
But you're discussing your bill. It's not the purpose of the motion is not to discuss your bill, not to debate the bill, but rather to have the bill removed from that committee because of certain reasons that you think are appropriate, and that will ultimately decide by this.
Give me an example of what's acceptable to you, because I'm told you're not going off the rules. So why don't you just give me an example? How would you like me to proceed? Go ahead.
I think I've already outlined for you. Tell me why. Tell me why the committee, what actions or inactions the committee has taken, which would necessitate it being removed from the committee.
Okay. I'll start over, Mr. Speaker.
Thanks.
Mr. Speaker, I have a bill, 8888, which may or may not be good, but I can't talk about that. It's been in the Military and Veterans Affairs Committee now for 16 years. During the course of that time, the bill has had many different numbers and many different sponsors, including you, Mr. Speaker, and including the chairwoman, Mr. Speaker. In 16 years of this bill being in committee, it has not been given the courtesy of a hearing. Not once, Mr. Speaker. In addition to that, Mr. Speaker, I have wrote letters to you. I have wrote letters to Cleopatra Tucker, the chairwoman. I have wrote letters to the majority leader, all requesting that this bill get attention in committee. And to date, it has not been given any attention. How am I doing now?
Well, you're laying out an argument.
Mr. Speaker, I don't believe it should be even up for debate whether or not this body believes disabled veterans need relief. There are 52 sponsors on my bill, 888, on a competing piece of legislation that also offers disabled veterans with property tax relief. There are an additional 2 sponsors. That makes 54 people in this body who have signed off on legislation that would give property tax reliefs to disabled veterans. It is unconscionable that with that much support, the chairwoman refuses to put it up for consideration in her committee. Now, Mr. Speaker, I hope you will allow me the smallest monochrome of latitude here. The chairwoman has used in the last 3 times I've come up here, the excuse for not bringing my bill to her committee is that she has a competing piece of legislation. Do you remember that?
Just go ahead with your statement.
She does. Okay. So if that truly is the reason, if that competing piece of legislation is the better piece of legislation, then why has the chairwoman not moved that? I would argue it's because it is not a better piece of legislation, and there is no intention by the chairwoman to move that legislation. It was introduced solely as a means to provide a seemingly viable excuse not to do the property tax relief bill. That was your bill, Mr. Speaker, and that was her bill, and is now my bill, A888. Mr. Speaker, the bill that is standing in the way, that the chairwoman uses every single time as the reason why it's not getting the attention it deserves, has fundamental differences from the piece of legislation that I have presented. I believe it's fair in articulating why this hasn't been given a fair shake to point out the differences in the two.
I don't think so.
You don't think? Of course you don't. Of course you don't, Mr. Speaker. So I will skip that part then, because you're being completely unreasonable. Honestly, Mr. Speaker, and this turned into a kangaroo court.
Please, Assemblyman.
Mr. Speaker, I will say, Mr. Speaker, you're being unreasonable.
I think we've all heard that. You believe that I'm being unreasonable.
Mr. Speaker, we listened to Assemblyman McKeon talk a tirade for 10 minutes about a bill that didn't create even a day. And you won't even let me get to this. It's really annoying me. I'm not going to lie.
You spoke on the same bill twice, Assemblyman.
Yeah.
3 times, if I'm not mistaken.
All right. So, Mr. Speaker, not having the opportunity to fully explain why the bill is good, and only given the opportunity to point out some of the reasons which fall in your wheelhouse of what you believe the rules say as why the bill isn't being moved. I will say this. I will end with this, Mr. Speaker. If you, Mr. Speaker, or the chairwoman, Cleopatra Tucker, is actually serious about moving a piece of disabled veterans legislation, then move it. Move a bill. If it's not my bill, Mr. Speaker, fine. I think my bill is far superior, and I could point out all the reasons, but if it's not going to be my bill, Mr. Speaker, then fine. Make it another bill, but move a bill. The time for kicking the can with no action and placating the veterans organizations and me and cutting me off when I'm trying to speak have to end. The time is now to do something for veterans. So if you're going to move the bill, move the bill. But, Mr. Speaker, since I know the chairwoman's not going to move a bill, and I can only motion to relieve a bill from committee in which I am the primary sponsor, today I'm going to make that motion. But I'm going to make one commitment to all of you and the majority party. If you come with me today and you allow me the opportunity to remove this bill from the committee in which it has been held hostage for 16 years and bring it to the floor, I will immediately turn around, Mr. Speaker, and move it back to second reading for purpose of amendment to make 2 key changes. One, the amendments are in front of me. I will extend the property tax exemption all the way down to 10% disabled veterans. It currently stops at 30%. I will make that amendment today.
I think you're getting close to debating. I've given you broad latitude.
I just have one more thing to
You've
say,
given
and
you
I'll be
broad
done.
latitude about.
You haven't given me broad anything.
I have indeed.
No, you haven't.
Yes, I have. Let's get to your
And
motion.
the
You're going to make a
second
motion,
thing
or
that I-
aren't you,
Yeah, I'm
Assemblyman?
making the
Well, let's
motion.
get to the
God,
motion.
You know, Mr. Speaker.
Let's get to the motion,
All right,
Assemblyman.
you're going to have a fun session when I sit down. I can promise that, Mr. Speaker. Two can play at this game. Mr. Speaker, I asked the clerk to read the record on Assembly Bill
Are you
888.
threatening me, Assemblyman?
No, I'm going to tell you, the rest of this session is going to, I want to speak on every bill. You want to cut me off? I'll speak on every bill. Mr. Speaker, I asked the clerk to read the record on Bill 888.
Madam Clerk, please read the record.
Assembly Bill 888 was pre-filed for introduction and referred to the Assembly Military and Veterans Committee on June 16th and June 16th, 2022, and December 15th, 2022. There was a motion made to relieve from committee.
Assemblyman Bergen.
Mr. Speaker, giving 24 hours notice as permitted by Rule 1023, the rule you could care less about, I motion to relieve A888 from the Military and Veterans Affairs Committee. That's the whole motion.
Is there a second? Majority Leader Greenwald, why do you rise?
Mr. Speaker, Rule 10:23B clearly states that the debate should be limited to whether or not the reference committee has given the bill fair and reasonable
Mr.
consideration.
Speaker, is he making what is he doing?
He's countering your argument.
He's not allowed to counter the
He
argument.
can. He can debate the
Mr. Speaker, if he wants to finish reading the rule, it'll say there's only one person authorized to comment on my debate, and it's the chairwoman.
Majority Leader Greenwald has
Read
the
rest
floor.
of it. Go ahead.
Mr. Speaker, I'm explaining why this bill has been given the consideration that Mr. Bergen is asking for. It doesn't guarantee him his right to what he's asking for, but there is a guarantee to him that it has been considered. So let me begin again before I was interrupted. Mr. Speaker, Rule 10:23B clearly states that the debate should be limited to whether or not the reference committee has given the bill fair and reasonable consideration. The chair has told the Assemblyman on more than one occasion that she is working on, with the support from veterans advocacy groups.
Assemblyman Bergen, please take your seat. Please take your seat. Denied. Go ahead. Mr. Bergen, please take your seat. Let's hear your point of order.
In Rule 10:23, the reference that he is making right now, this is a point of order. It says exactly what he says. However,
Okay.
it goes on.
Then I guess we agree. Please take your seat.
Mr. Speaker.
Please take your seat, Assemblyman. Majority Leader Greenwald, continue. No, I'm not. I'm denying you the point of order. You've made your point of order. I've directed everybody, please. Everybody, please. One person at a time. Assemblyman Bergen, please take your seat. Assemblyman Bergen, please take your seat. Okay. Okay, let's do it. Is there a motion with regard to the chair's ruling on the point of personal privilege, or not a point, the point of order that Assemblyman Bergen has asked for? All those in favor of the chair's ruling signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Please take your seat. Majority Leader Greenwald.
I would say to both Democratic and Republican legislators that are in the room today, those veteran advocates are here. They are here. And they support, Mr. Speaker, clearly Mr. Bergen does not want the public to know that veterans support the chairwoman's bill as opposed to his frivolous bill that is run amok.
All right.
So the reality is the veterans that are standing before you today support the chairwoman's bill. It's that simple. He has had an opportunity to make his case. His bill has not met full consideration. The
I think you're out of order,
a
Assemblyman.
decision.
You're out of order. I'm not going to recognize you.
Mr. Bergen, it's
Mr.
a
Bergen, please take your
democracy.
seat.
It is a democracy, Mr. Bergen. These veteran advocacy groups have worked tirelessly with the chairwoman to make sure that a similar bill to include provisions that help disabled veteran renters, provide some income limitations, and help the people who need it most. Therefore, the bill has received reasonable consideration, and I move to table the motion.
Majority Leader Greenwald moves to table. Speaker Pro Tem Wemberly seconds that. All in favor of the motion to table, signify by saying aye. Signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Would you like a roll call vote? Well, that's not an answer. Madam Clerk, please open the machine for a roll call vote on the motion to table.